It started as a simple question. Did you watch VeggieTales today? But what I uncovered at my child's daycare would spiral into a war I never imagined, one that cost a teacher her job, divided parents, and made me question everything about how far is too far to protect your child. I never imagined a simple kids' cartoon could ignite a full-blown daycare crisis. It began innocently enough, a casual question after picking up my son. Did you watch VeggieTales today? I asked, expecting the usual. I don't remember. But he nodded. My stomach sank. VeggieTales? I had made it clear, no VeggieTales. I'd drawn the line somewhere between harmless fun and whatever this was. The next morning, I tried to clarify with his teacher. Did they watch VeggieTales yesterday? I asked cautiously. She hesitated, eyes flicking away. We didn't show the kids anything inappropriate, I pressed. But VeggieTales? Her lips tightened. No answer. I remember that moment vividly, the flicker of guilt or maybe fear passing over her face. My heart pounded. I told her firmly, I don't want him watching VeggieTales. She shrugged, calm as if she'd dealt with overprotective parents before. He won't watch anything inappropriate. I left uneasy. That night, I asked my son again, Did you watch VeggieTales today? Yes, he said, cheerfully oblivious. I emailed the administration immediately. They reassured me. VeggieTales was not approved media and had never been shown. It wouldn't be shown. The following week, the same question, the same cheerful answer. My emails went unanswered or were met with a polite, dismissive, maybe your son is confused. Confused? He knew exactly what he watched. Anger and disbelief began to twist inside me. I couldn't sit back. I asked my boss if I could leave early, and with a pounding heart, I walked past the receptionist, who tried to stop me, into the main classroom. And there it was, the familiar, colourful vegetables dancing across the screen. I snapped a photo. I was warned for barging in, but the evidence was undeniable. Administration promised action. The teacher would take all tapes home, never bring them again. I thought the nightmare was over. For a week, it seemed to work. No VeggieTales today, Dad, my son said, and I breathed a cautious sigh of relief. Then, the next week, Yep, he said, eyes wide and innocent. By this point, my frustration had morphed into a simmering obsession. I felt like I was caught in a loop I couldn't escape. Lie after lie, VeggieTales after VeggieTales, a simple children's cartoon turning into a battlefield I hadn't signed up for. I started reaching out to anyone who would listen. Other parents, friends, even strangers I knew might sympathize. Surprisingly, some did. One mother, whose daughter watched VeggieTales at home, admitted she didn't want it shown at daycare. If my daughter has questions, I want to answer them, not the teacher, she said. That was it. The first ally in what quickly became an informal, anti-VeggieTales coalition. The group grew slowly but steadily, parents nodding gravely at every new piece of evidence I provided. I became the messenger of warnings, a self-appointed guardian of innocent eyes. The teacher, once unaware, now seemed to shrink whenever I walked past, a flicker of guilt or fear, or maybe just irritation, haunting her gaze. Yet somehow, the show continued. My emails to administration began piling up, increasingly tense, my words sharper, less polite. I kept a careful record, dates, times, quotes from my son. Each confirmation that VeggieTales had played, each denial from the staff, each promise from the administration, everything meticulously logged. It felt like a courtroom trial, and I was both prosecutor and jury. Eventually, the administration had no choice. They confronted the teacher, tapes confiscated, promises made, warnings issued, but the story didn't end there. My son, innocent and oblivious, confirmed again the next week that he had watched the show. I felt the floor drop beneath me. This isn't over, I thought, a cold knot forming in my chest. Escalation was inevitable. I involved more parents, made sure every complaint was heard, every instance documented. The coalition pressed the daycare hard. Emails, calls, meetings. Tension grew like a storm cloud over the centre, thick and electric. The staff whispered, eyes darting nervously. Parents divided into factions, some quietly watching the drama unfold, some joining our cause. And then, finally, the decision was made. The teacher who had repeatedly ignored the rules, who had deflected, denied, and continued to show VeggieTales, was fired. My heart raced, not with victory, but with dread. The backlash came immediately. Parents whispered in the pickup line. Friends and neighbours shook their heads. Even my own wife, whose support had never wavered, looked at me with a mixture of disappointment and disbelief. "You went on the warpath," she said softly. "They're just animated vegetables." Her words hit harder than I expected. I felt it then, the weight of my own actions, the consequences I had unleashed. Yes, the show had stopped. But at what cost? A teacher's career ended, parents divided, friends alienated, all because I refused to let my son watch a cartoon I didn't approve. And as I watched him play innocently, completely unaware of the storm I had created, I wondered, had I done the right thing? Or had I let my obsession dictate justice where there should have been patience? The weeks after the firing were tense and surreal. Daycare felt different, almost hollow. Teachers whispered when I passed, glancing over their shoulders. Some parents avoided eye contact, while others, quietly, offered small nods of approval. I could feel the ripple of my actions extending far beyond the animated vegetables that had started it all. At home, my son remained blissfully unaware of the chaos. "Daddy, can we watch cartoons?" he asked one evening. I smiled, forcing calm into my voice. "Sure, buddy, but no VeggieTales, okay?" He nodded, his innocent eyes sparkling, and for the first time in weeks, I allowed myself a moment of relief, thinking maybe the storm had finally passed. But the truth gnawed at me. I had gone further than I ever imagined I would. I had become the architect of someone's downfall. The teacher's face flashed in my mind every time I closed my eyes, the way she tried to hide her frustration, the tension in her shoulders, the defensiveness that had ultimately failed. And I couldn't shake the whispers of judgment from fellow parents, overreacting, obsessive, unreasonably controlling. Even my wife's subtle critique haunted me. "You pulled a me," she said, shaking her head, "and went on the warpath." I had thought I was protecting my child, standing up for what I believed was right. But at what point does protection become persecution? At what point does vigilance cross the line into obsession? Despite the unease, part of me justified every action. The teacher had broken rules. The administration had been slow, evasive. My coalition had grown because others felt the same concern. Surely, in their eyes, I was right. But the lingering guilt, the unease at the social fallout, it was a heavy price to pay. I began to reflect late at night, replaying every email, every confrontation, every decision. The cartoon that sparked it all seemed almost absurd in hindsight. Animated vegetables. Yet, in the moment, the threat had felt real, urgent, unavoidable. I realized then that this story wasn't just about a show. It was about control, about fear, about the lengths one will go to protect what they love, even if it hurts others. Eventually, life slowly returned to normal. The daycare resumed its routines, the storm faded into gossip, and my son played blissfully ignorant in a world I had made safe, but at a cost. And I, sitting alone in the quiet of the evening, had to reconcile two truths. One, that I had acted out of love. Two, that love, unchecked, can sometimes become a weapon. It was over, yet the echoes remained. The fired teacher, the divided parents, the whispered judgments, and my own restless conscience. VeggieTales was gone from his days, yes, but the story of what it had unleashed would linger far longer. And in that quiet, I couldn't help but ask myself, with no one to answer, had I truly protected him, or had I just proven how far fear could drive a parent?